Hello and welcome to the Cheese Room Podcast Monday night show, a review of our comprehensive demolition of Vincent Kompany's Burnley side. 5-2 win, very enjoyable. I hope you all enjoyed it. Well, I did. Anyway, got a lovely panel to help me out here to talk about this because I'm very tired. To my right is the lovely, from America, Jack.
How you doing today? I'm doing well myself. We're on a bank holiday, so I've not been having to be at work all day, so that's really quite nice. And just getting ready to talk about some beautiful Spurs football. Looking forward to it.
Yep. Below me is Seb. Welcome back. Been on 2 shows in a row, you know.
2 shows in a row, yes. Become a bit of a regular. Yeah, it was good. With family on Saturday and managed to watch the game on my phone. And then yesterday, kids football, and then proceeded to get quite drunk in the afternoon. And even though today is not a bank holiday in the UK, it's felt like it because my wife didn't get out of bed till 3 o'clock, and both the kids are still off school. I was running around like a lunatic, not knowing what was going on. But yeah, it's definitely felt like bank holiday Monday today.
Yeah, well, funny for me because I know my sisters are back at school, which is crazy. It's only the 4th. Anyway, Becky, lovely to have you on as ever. Did you have a good weekend? Enjoyable?
I did, thank you. Those of you that watched last Monday's show will remember that I was holding the computer. I'm back at home now. I've got the tripod. Everything's all stable. So yeah, we got the ferry. The ferry docked at 2 o'clock on Saturday. So I listened to the match in the car, driving up the M1, and then got home for match of the day and didn't realise that we were first on match of the day. So kind of we unpacked the car and we sat down, and then they showed the Man City game, and I was like, oh, right, okay, we must be on after that. And the Chelsea game, I was like, we were on first, we missed it, but that's fine. And then I watched the highlights again on Sunday, and as we do, I think I watched some more highlights on Sunday and then bits of match of the day too. We just can't get enough of it at the moment. So yeah, it's been a long time since I've watched that much repeated of Spurs, but yeah, we had so much to talk about. But yeah,
do you know how we are virtually never first on match of the day? No. Unless it's a North London derby or we beat City or something, we never are. But so, you know, reasonable error. So first of all, when it came out, I was in bed when it came out because it was this, Saturday. I'd been out the night before after doing the pod, so that's fun. The big change, obviously, was Richie dropped, Solomon comes in, Son goes up front. What did you think of that, Becky?
Yeah, so I think we were, like I said, we were kind of coming out of Dover and whatever, and they sort of announced the team, and then on my WhatsApp group, the girls were all going, "Oh my God, Richie's not playing, and he's put Son up front and Solomon." And I thought, because I must admit, watching the Fulham game on Tuesday, I thought Solomon struggled. I don't know whether going back to Craven Cottage, and he didn't do as well as I'd seen him in pre-season. So I was quite surprised to see him start, but I thought brilliant. Obviously we've had I'm away the same point next year, and it's brilliant because I didn't have to watch the transfer, the end of deadline day or any of that on Sky because I was away. But kind of obviously having players come in, and then were players going out, and were more players going out, and then they kind of didn't, and then there was Lloris thing right at the end, and then was Sanchez going, and so kind of to see that we, how he was going to kind of make up on Saturday, because we assumed that Johnson hadn't signed in time. So to see kind of Son got up front, I was just so relieved, and obviously we'll come on to it later. But I was saying to my boys and to Dave in the car was that Son took his chance. Richarlison isn't taking his chances, whether they be actual physical chances or his opportunity. So the first time Son goes up front this season and he gets a hat trick, and that just shows the kind of the quality of the player, and how form is temporary but class is permanent. So I think I was delighted that that kind of happened. But yeah, like I said, we've had this sentence before. It's a nice, confident move from Ange, and he's not afraid to make those kind of decisions, and long may it continue.
Yeah, completely agree. I'll go to you next, Seb. Obviously, we went behind early on. What was it? 4th minute. I had a weird feeling because had that happened any point in the last 2 or 3 seasons, I've been like, oh, here we go again. I actually wasn't it didn't shake my mood at all. I don't know if you were the same at all.
No, because didn't really have time to think like that. The way that we play now, we're always going to create chances. I didn't expect us to go into a shell. Obviously, we're in the equalising goal, pretty quick after 10-15 minutes. I think it was. But that's positive. You go 1-0 down at half time or something like that. An hour when you're not really chasing the game and leaving gaps, because we do leave gaps. That's what we do. Then there's a problem. But yeah, the team kind of they look what's the word I'm looking for? Like unflappable, really. I think they understand that the way that we play, as I said, there's going to be chances for the opposition. It's Premier League. Teams can score against you, but the amount of the chances that we have. What you said, James, about last year, you would have felt differently. The main reason why will be that we weren't seeing much of the ball. Now we're seeing the ball so often. It's down to us to kind of do something with it, and we always seem to be carrying this kind of impetus, this thrust, if you like, to go forward and try.
We lost that.
I think that's a good point that he's making, though. I hadn't really.
You back?
Yeah, I hadn't really considered what Seb said. I think that's a really good point to Becky, and Becky's point is that even going down a goal soon, which we did a lot, obviously in the last couple of years, I don't think people are panicking at all, just because, as Seb says, the number of chances that are going to be created during a game for this squad, I don't think there'd be any panic whatsoever, because so we didn't play great. That was not a great sequence against Burnley in the first 4 minutes, but I don't think anyone's concerned that they're not going to get the chance to equalize and go ahead. So I think that's a really good point, and that's one of the beauties of the system, is that when you have the ball, it's amazing that the other team can't score a lot. So
the only thing that disappointed me for their goal, it was, if you remember, in the Man United game. Do you remember in the Man United game early on? I can't remember who it was, but somebody on the right hand side kind of crossed it, and Rashford either headed it over or somebody headed it over, and Porro was kind of done. That is the same for the goal, isn't it? That Burnley scored this year. So that's like 2 games, well, kind of 2 or 3 games where Porro has done that. But because our fullbacks now playing such a kind of forward position, there is going to be times where that happens to Porro and he's kind of done over the top. But I'm sure he will kind of build on that. But yeah, it was just interesting that the goal was scored in a very similar way to that Man United chance. But like you said, it didn't affect us. We kept going and kicked on.
Yeah, I mean, there's obviously defensive deficiencies in Porro's game, but when you look at what he offered us going forward that game, I think it doesn't bother me too much. He'll get better at it. Usually we'd sit around and dissect their goal, but let's not bother. Let's just talk about our equaliser. So I'm not sure who hit it long, but beautiful long ball.
It was
good
Mr.
touch
Porro.
from Sonny. It was Porro.
Yes.
Made up for it.
Yeah.
Beautiful 1-2. Solomon. Richie chips it over. Solomon, like that, I think that pass is a lot harder than it looked. The maturity in that decision, it's a great goal, wasn't it, Jack?
Yeah, I think you're right about that. I watching it back, actually, I didn't appreciate it at the time, but the defense was not great. They backed off him a little bit, but it's still a threaded ball with the exact pace that you need to find Son, who obviously has as confident a finish as we've seen in a long time from him. But it was certainly, you're right, a much better pass than I realized at the time. And I think Solomon should get credit. And as Becky was saying, I was actually surprised to see him start. Because you're right, he didn't catch the eye against Fulham. Although I think part of the problem is who he's playing with in that setup. Not getting a lot of great service, not getting a lot of great opportunities. And I know Anne's got on him pretty hard for sending basically a 30-yard ball back to Vicario at one point during the match. But I like the fact that he was given a chance to play and start again, despite maybe not impressing against Fulham, although I think he had some moments. And he obviously rewarded the manager and the team significantly. And that first pass for that goal was certainly an example of it. I thought he had a really, really solid game. I was glad to see it.
He almost seems like the kind of guy who does need, I mean, this sounds a bit daft, but he does need the better players around him for him to play well. That's how it almost feels a little bit, doesn't it, Becky?
Yeah, and I think we forget, because I think, was it 7 players that played on Saturday weren't starting last season, something like that. And we forget that he's not been here very long. It's just because things have they've all started so well. And there's been such a huge improvement in so many of the players that were here as well, maybe with the exception of Richarlison, that we just were like, oh, everybody, like you said, everybody was very poor at Fulham, and there was a lot of changes. But he's still relatively new. He's still learning, and so I think we don't want to be too harsh on him. I was surprised at the fact he started, because Ange said in his press conference in the week that he thought that Richarlison had a poor game at Fulham despite scoring, but he kind of shuffled Richarlison around, but didn't for Solomon. So, he's obviously seen things in training and things. I can't remember who it was, but somebody's put in the chat, did they think that Son mishit the first one? The way they described it on the radio was it was just this kind of sublime, kind of deft sort of chip, wasn't it? I'm going with that rather than it being a mishit, I think.
Yeah, I'd agree. It was
they definitely. There was no element of fluke or anything.
It's the most confident I think we've seen Son playing a game in probably since his last. Well, I'd say in over a year. Would you agree, Seb?
Yeah, sorry guys. Can I just check? Can you hear me? Okay, because
we can hear you. You're quite glitchy. Yeah, your screen is quite glitchy, but we can hear you.
Yeah, we can hear you at the moment.
Yeah, I can't hear you guys. I can't hear you.
Oh, okay. Well, we can run without you, buddy. It's not a problem.
Let him go and come back.
Yeah.
But yeah, so like even if you compare it to like the, it is difficult to think of games that Son's had that were on a similar level to that. You obviously got the hat trick at Leicester last season, but he only came on for, what was it, 21 minutes or 17 minutes or whatever it was, and he was quite clear. I think the thing for me, and I'm sure the rest of the panel agree, is that everybody's delighted. Everybody's delighted for everybody else, and they all just seem so happy, don't they? Everybody, we had Romero score, we had Maddison score, we had Son score, but everybody was equally as delighted as everybody else was. Udogie was, and Van der Ven, and what we're seeing, I think, is performances across the whole field, the whole pitch, rather than maybe it being, a Kane having an amazing game, or it's just, arguably every player has an opportunity to be sort of seen as player of the match and that sort of thing. And it's like going back to the Solomon thing. It's something we're just not used to, and it's brilliant, but it's not what we're used to.
No, it's not felt like that for quite a long time. It's felt as if, and I know there was behind the scenes a little bit of animosity towards Kane in a way from some of the players, because they felt he was the untouchable golden child, which, to be fair, greatest ever goal scorer, he's going to be that guy. But it does very much feel like we are a team again. I think a lot of that, almost all of that, comes from Ange himself. Would you agree, Jack?
Yeah, I would say without question, Ange is definitely a type of personality that I think every fan and everyone who's watching this broadcast can feel the personality and charisma and character that he brings, and the confidence I think he's instilled in the players to say, you know what, I'm a professional footballer. I'm good. I can play this game, and now I've got a manager who's going to let me use my skill set to its best ability, and I think everyone's going to rally around that. And again, I don't have anything against Kane, of course, or Dyer or Hugo or anything, but I think we have clearly with those players, those older leaders being moved out of the squad one way or another, it's given the other players, I think clearly we see it from Romero, who's having, I want to talk about particularly our defense, and Romero in particular, having an enormous season so far. It's very early doors, but it's an enormous season in so many respects. But everyone seems to be really happy, confident, and it kind of gives you that sort of that best vibe you got from the Poch days when everyone was clearly on board a project, and you get that little bit of that sense going right now, I think.
That's a good point to make, because kind of I've got my, as I always do, I've got my list of what happened in the match. And the next thing I've got written down is the save that Vicario made with his feet after the kind of block that Romero did as he kind of ran back. Now, I obviously was listening to that on, I think it was Radio 5, and Chris Sutton, who's just very joyless when he commentates on Spurs. There's just no expression at all in his voice. And he went, "Oh, I don't like the way Vicario over-celebrated that. It's not like Spurs have won a trophy for that celebration." And then I obviously get home and watch it on Match of the Day, and he is doing the whole, isn't he? And even Romero, you see Romero pan to him, and the two of them are doing it. And my Jack's watching it, and he's a goalkeeper, and he went, "I'd be celebrating like that as well. That was an amazing save. The fact that it deflected off Romero because he made a block and it kind of looped over." He said the same thing. He said goalkeepers spend quite a lot of time not doing a great deal, and if they make an important save, and we talked about this at the United game, and I know I talked about it at the other games, but I remember, obviously I was at the Man United game, is that those saves that he made early on, or those kind of situations where they headed it over, that changes the game if they go in. So, you know, it was only 1-1 at the time. I think there's no problem with celebrating, you know, those kind of situations, because, you know, it is part of the whole kind of jigsaw of the whole match, and I don't think there's anything wrong with over celebrating a good save.
Yeah, I mean, do you know what? If it's annoying people who obviously don't like Spurs, keep doing it. That's brilliant. You know, but what's wrong with celebrating a save and being happy that you made a great save? It's just joyless. You know, it's the same people who complain when fans celebrate too much. But you know, I'll go to you next, Seb. Next goal, Romero. Have you ever seen a better goal from a centre back?
Guys, I don't know if you can hear me, but I'm going to have to leave. I don't know what's happening.
Oh, okay.
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 Yeah.
No probs.
Yeah, Jack, we'll go to you then.
Yeah, I was actually, I was joking with my son. Isaiah is like, I wonder if Romero pulled the video clip of that and then texted it to his pal Messi and say, "Hey, what's so hard about this?" Because I mean, I rarely in the last couple of years have I come out of my seat on goals when I'm watching, but that was one of them, because I couldn't, in fact, I wasn't even sure I had seen it right, because I assumed, I was like, okay, that wasn't Romero. I assumed it wasn't him. I just had misplaced where people were on the pitch and just hadn't picked up on it. And somebody had gotten into that spot. I thought maybe it was Porro or something. I just misread it. And then when they played it back, it's like, no, that was Romero. I mean, I was astounded. That is as good a finish as Harry Kane would ever hope to make from that position. Granted, he had all day to hit it. No one closed him down, but still, I mean, that's inside the post, upper 90. That was a strike. I gotta say, that was a lot of fun.
Yeah,
lots of people saying in the chat as well about how, you know, I've read that yesterday, he hasn't made any fouls yet, he hasn't been booked yet, you know, and we said, you touched on it before about becoming vice captain and kind of how that sort of, you know, he's really kind of stepped up. I tweeted something yesterday, people have seen that, you know, people were, and there are some people watching this show and part of this show said that, you know, Romero wasn't really doing it for Spurs last year. He was too much kind of for Argentina, and he didn't really want to play for Spurs, and he was, you know, injured when he wasn't injured, and all this, and whether we know any of that was true, and whether he was, you know, a bit like Lo Celso, performed better for Argentina than did for Spurs, and all of that. And I tweeted the whole sort of, you know, Romero was one of those players that you've seen such a huge transformation this year. You know, I remember when it was announced that he was vice captain, I think I said on this show, you just said, you know, when they go up to the ref and they talk about the ref about calming down players, how would that work with Romero? But he really has kind of stepped up and taken that commitment. And I read something, I think someone replied to my tweet today to say that there was talk that if Conte was staying, Romero would have moved on. So, you know, I think it's just great to see that we knew he was the player that he was. And we still run that risk that, you know, in a couple of years' time, he might move somewhere like Real Madrid or something. We may have that. But we want to see the best out of him while we've got him. And he's, you know, and then people were replying going, oh, it's because he's not got Dyer next to him and he's not got Sanchez next to him. And, you know, obviously Van de Ven has been a part of that as well. Which, again, watching it, kind of, we're doing things out of order a bit, but I remember watching the highlights back and there's, I think, for one of the goals, Van de Ven makes an interception, doesn't he? And then he passes it to Udogie. And we had that with Romero. Romero last year played so much further up the pitch, didn't he? But having Van de Ven doing it as well, it's just really sort of it's just great to see. Obviously we hope they all come back from international duty all okay and not injured. I hate this time of year where we worry about every sort of tackle and that sort of thing. But hopefully they all come back and we can kick on, because there's a real sort of momentum building.
It definitely feels like that. I think almost there's a little sense of the club that, and do you know what? Same exact thing I think occurred with Pochettino a little bit. I don't think anyone, aside from me, I'm going to say, I predict we'd be doing quite well. Thought we'd be doing quite so well. Again, it's very early days. We went out to Fulham, but we're not just winning games like we did under Conte and Mourinho early doors. We're beating teams. Teams aren't losing to us. We're beating them. And I think that's the difference. I mean, not playing next to Dyer and Sanchez in a low block. Yeah, that does help. That does help, right? Like having a guy next to you who complements your skill set in a partnership. Yeah, that certainly helps, right? Like, certainly.
I think one of the things I this can be for Dave's benefit, this can be the Romero Appreciation Society here for just a moment, which is you're right, he has not had a single foul or a card in 4 games, which is great. It's actually true also that neither center back has committed a foul in 4 games, and yet it's not like they're just getting breezed through and not challenging, not trying. In fact, Romero is tops in the Premier League in ground duels for anyone who's challenged at least 10 of them. I mean, he's having an enormously huge season, and if that continues and he stays healthy, which obviously are 2 big ifs, because we know what's happening. We'll talk about the transfers and what's behind our 2 starting center backs, I guess, later. But they're having an incredible season. You've gotten 2 goals and 3 assists out of the back line in 4 games. I mean, it is ridiculous how well these 2 have slotted in with each other, in Mickey and Romero. I mean, it's phenomenal.
Yeah, I completely agree. They look like one of the best centre-back partnerships since Jan and Toby. Well, the best since Jan and Toby. 3rd goal, James Maddison. It was Kane-esque in a way, wasn't it? Loads of time, loads of space, just cuts inside, cross goal, beautiful finish. Kane couldn't have done that one better. He said.
No, it was great finish. Like you say, lots of time and space, lots of awareness, but Udogie obviously does well to contest that ball. And again, it's positioning. Your left back is 3/4 of the way up the pitch, putting pressure on. Burnley are trying to play out. They changed their formation at halftime. Sorry, I don't know if you covered what I'm saying, because obviously
no, we haven't.
No,
internet problem. But yeah, Burnley changed their formation. Tried to basically pick it up at the back and play out. And we are incredibly difficult to get round because of our it's not even the press. I hear a lot of people going on about the high press. If you look, I don't think they're really pressing with more energy than things I've seen before. It's where they start from. It's their positional sense is further up the pitch. And you don't have to press if you're starting further up the pitch.
Exactly.
Yeah, completely agree. Internet's gone. It's not Seb's internet's finest showing, is it? He did raise a point that I'd forgotten about, actually. That at half time they switched to a back 3, if I'm not mistaken, and attempted to play out from the back a little more, and it just didn't work for them.
I think also watching Sonny as well, they kind of playing out. Sonny's trying to kind of press the keeper, isn't he? And then it's Udogie that kind of makes the interception. And Maddison has, there's nobody really on him, is he? It's a beautiful kind of finish for him to take. But yeah, the marking was really poor, but still wonderful to see. And we've got those sort of celebrations and things back. So like when he's throwing his darts, and we talked a couple of weeks about the clapping and the clicking and all that sort of thing. And Son was doing that, I think, with Sarr and Solomon. So we've got that kind of camaraderie back. Obviously, that breeds confidence and enjoyment. And like I said last week, I just think it must be so much more fun to play in. And like you said, heads don't drop when they go 1-0 down. I think, because when we were playing so deep last year, we had so few opportunities, and so the chances, and they know that the way they play, the chances will continue to come. So that's kind of like a really positive thing. And we haven't talked about the crowd yet either. The crowd were brilliant as well. Yeah.
Actually, that's something for someone who only gets to watch over the telly. The away fan support has been tremendous. I mean, even going back to that miserable Fulham game, I mean, they put the rest of that stadium to shame. I mean, it was so loud. It was coming. Not always does it come through from my viewing. Does it come through? But they have definitely been heard in every single match, and they've been tremendous. And I, credit to them. I mean, because now they're actually getting something to really cheer and get excited about. But yeah, so the third goal. The third goal that we had, I like the fact, I think that's our third goal outside of the 18. And so something that we didn't do a lot of in the past is I thought we didn't shoot enough from outside. If people are willing to take those shots from outside 18, that's only going to free up even more space for whoever's playing through the middle, or the runs from the fullbacks through the channels coming in, or the attacking midfielder. It's just going to open up more and more space. If we're going to be dangerous from 25 yards or 25 yards, and that's going to make a huge difference.
Because Royal's goal was outside the area, wasn't it? I noticed that
see going forward.
That got man of the match, goal of the month, didn't it? So, yeah. Hi, Craig.
Hi all. I just saw Seb had jumped out, so I super subbed in like Solomon. Just thought I'd come on, drop some assists, and then go again.
We're just got as far as Maddison's goal to make it 2-1. That's where to make it 3-1. 3-1. Yeah, that's where we were up to.
Yeah. What were your thoughts on that goal, just in general?
It was just typical Maddison, wasn't it? It's trademark Maddison. Give him that space on the edge of the box, he's going to put it into that bottom or top corner. So great goal. It's what we want to see. I was saying earlier that the impact that Maddison's had on our side in such a short space of time is unbelievable, isn't it? I think it's totally. I certainly underrated him from his Leicester days. I didn't realise quite how good he was, and I think the fact he's come in, not just his general assists. Yes, I have still got the sponsorship. His assists, his goals, his contribution, his leadership's just been phenomenal. And I thought that goal on the weekend was just brilliant. Was you there, Becky? By the way,
no, I was coming back from Holland. Yeah.
Oh, of course you was. I did see on your socials. Yeah,
because I had my Sonny top and Jack had the Maddison one on, so we kind of stopped to charge the car about 4:30. So yeah, got a quick picture of the son away kit. But yeah, I'd have been there, boys.
Hang on, we can have sponsorships for drink beverages. Guinness, you know what to do.
I was going to say you'd be the one, yeah.
You know what to do, Guinness. He looks like he was just born to play for Spurs almost.
He is. Yeah.
It's not, he is that Ericsson replacement. It only took 4 years, but he just is that player, and that classic goal from him. Happy to see him score again. Then Son, classic Son goal. What do you think, Jack? I thought it was a really good cross, really good finish, really convincing.
Yeah, actually. Yeah, it really is. Again, Becky mentioned earlier, we haven't seen this sort of confidence and clinical nature from Son probably since the Leicester hat trick, which he just came on and lit everything up. But that was really a one-off in a poor season overall for a variety of reasons. But I think that Son, in fact, I'll just put this up real quick, just to show everyone. Does anyone know who has more Premier League goals in this trio? And it is Sonny. He is now he's now passed both Drogba and Ronaldo for Premier League goals. He's at 106. So congratulations to him. I mean, that's just it was a great, calm, old-fashioned Sonny performance in both in the fourth and the fifth. Although I think the special credit, we'll get to that fifth goal, the special credit needs to come back to some of the offensive performance we had with Porro. But yeah, no, I think we don't want to get overexcited because, again, Sonny playing through the middle all of a sudden has a hat trick, and I think everyone's saying, okay, well, clearly that Richarlison needs to move to the bench and Sonny needs to come through the middle. And I don't think we can expect every team to be as open as Burnley. I think they're a little naive. I think Burnley's going to be fine, but I think he needs to adjust his setup for playing the better teams, which I think we can now, at least offensively, count ourselves as that. He needs to be a little bit more pragmatic. He can do that against the bottom half, and I think they'll be fine and be safe. But that was just way too much space given in too many areas. But again, the great thing is we actually capitalize on it and make them pay. As I said, we're not getting, as you said earlier, James, we're not lucking into wins or snatching something out of the jaws of defeat. We're actually just beating teams, and that's what we did.
Yeah. What I really liked about that second goal of Sonny was that, I think Kerry put it in the chat, there could have been 3 or 4 players that could have scored. We were just sort of piling so far forward. Maybe Burnley was sort of tiring, or they were kind of seeing that, but he sort of just passes it into the net, doesn't it? This really lovely ball from Solomon as well, and that kind of sort of interplay between them. But I think, like as we've said before, a happy Sonny is always a really, really effective Sonny.
Yeah, and that's a great example. The two of them can do a lot together. I'm pretty sure that the two of them can. If you get, I think Sonny's been impressing people from what I understand from some accounts of how his leadership has really risen to the top, having been named captain. And I think with the positive attitude that he brings every single day, I think it's just these two can do a lot, I think, for this club this year. And I don't know where we're going to finish. Don't want to pretend after 4 games that we're going to be, top 2 or 3, but it's certainly going to be a much more enjoyable season with these two guys leading.
Well, I actually, for those who don't know, which is everyone, basically, I actually have a £50 whatever bet with Jack's son that will finish within 15 points of the champions. So, I hope we do now, as I'm going to be out 50 quid.
And just so we're clear, I don't pay his gambling debts. I want you to be clear about that. I want everyone in the cheese room to realize that that's a bet with him. He's an adult. He can make that bet, but I ain't paying it off. Just so we're clear.
Where's my money?
He also bet me. I got to check this. He bet some amount with me that Richarlison would get 15 goals. And then I said, well, if Kane gets sold this early in summer, saying Kane gets sold, the bet's off. He's like, that's fair. I think I'm willing to re-engage with that
bet. I'd hope he'd not fall for that one. We'll move on. Sonny's last goal, superb for his hat-trick, but for me, that was all about Porro's pass, wasn't it? Got to use that pass, just superb from a right back. It had the class of Iniesta, I think.
It reminded me very much of the Villa goal, not last season, the season before, I think, when Kane sort of curled it round and then Son ran on. But when I obviously heard it in the car, but then when I watched it back, I said to Jack, that's like the I've put in the chat before, that's the way that Son used to score. Somebody pings it over the top, he'd run on, and then the next minute it's in the goal. And we've talked a lot before that when Sonny is not under any pressure, that's the type of goal that he will always score. So it reminded me very much of a kind of a goal of Sonny that we're used to. But like we said, it was a different assister. It was Porro that was kind of pinging that ball that kind of bent round the last man. So I think that was really lovely to kind of see that we haven't lost that kind of side with not having the assisting element of Kane. There are other people that are doing it for Sonny as well.
You've got a system that's creating just goals in general, and they can come from anybody. You look at the fact that before, for our first couple of games, all our goals had come from midfielders or centre-backs. I mean, Romero scored twice this season, right?
Yeah.
He's actually scored more goals than Richarlison, so you never know. Maybe put on a bet that who's going to score more goals. I hate to be mean to Richie, but I do actually like him.
Yeah, I don't want to do that. Yeah, I don't want that bet.
But for Son to get his hat-trick, I think that's just going to really, boost his confidence. We're going to use Craig. You haven't said much. Do you think that? He's going to really I just think
with to use an Avengers reference, it's inevitable. He just scores goals, doesn't he? He's class. It doesn't. And there's been lots of talk about the fact, it's because he got moved into that number 9 position that he scored the 3 goals. I think that's all gobbledygook. I think it wasn't that long ago, a couple of seasons ago, he was top goal scorer with Sarr, playing out of the wing, coming in from the right. It's nothing to do with his position. He's just a class player. He's a goal scorer. And it's like I say, it's inevitable. We're playing with such a style and a way of playing that we're creating so many opportunities. He's always going to score. You give Son or Solomon or even Richarlison to a certain extent, a bucket full of chances. They're going to put some away. Yes, some more than others, but they're going to put the goals away, and that's what we're seeing. Over the moon that he got his 3 goals. Like I say, I wasn't surprised in the slightest. It was inevitable in my mind. And Sonny will do Sonny, and he'll probably go on and score 2 or 3 in the next 2 or 3 games as well.
Yeah, agreed. I mean, even last season, which was his worst season, he still scored 10 league goals and had several assists. I mean, that's by anyone else's standards, that's a good season. And I think now he's the main man. I can see him getting back to that Salah equaling season where he got the golden boot.
But he did that though, didn't he, James? When he wasn't the main man, when we had Kane on the side, he did that. So it's not. I think he needs to be playing to. We need to play to his strengths, and it's not just his strengths. We need to play to the team's strengths, and I think that's what I don't know what you guys think. I think that's what we're seeing now. Across all of the those players that are standing out as players that we're saying they've really stood up this year. It's not because of anything. They're still the same players. We're just playing in a system and in a way and in a team that enables them to show their best and to be their best. And that's it. We're playing to their strengths, whether that's Sonny, whether that's Solomon, whether that's Perisic, or whoever you play, Porro, whoever you want to pick out.
Yeah, I completely agree. After we got our 5th and we'd wrapped up the result, basically, Ange made 3 subs. I will say I really like how he almost, I think, aside from the Brentford game, he always makes 5 subs. He really does love using his 5 subs up. Hey, he says back. Hopefully,
hopefully you're in you, Seb, so I can jump off again if you're back.
No. I'm so sorry, guys. Literally, I sat there listening to you all for about 5 minutes in the background, perfect. And then the second James put me into the room, it just dropped. But I think it's because I'm running about 8 games of Football Manager in the background.
Well, that is certainly multitasking.
Are you Tottenham, Seb?
No, I'm Red Star Belgrade.
Oh, interesting choice.
That sounds interesting.
17 years in and Kings of Europe.
Average Football Manager player. So Ange made 2 subs. He brought on Perisic, Solomon, and Højbjerg for Sarr. How do we think they did? I mean, they're obviously substitutions designed to just wrap the game up and see it out and slow things down. How do we think they did, Becky?
Well, we parked the car, I think, about 25, and then I started charging it, went in to get something, and then saw that they'd scored, and then kind of looked back over what happened, and they were saying, we've basically gone. People were just saying it's more proof that our B team is not the same as our A team, which kind of goes back to the Fulham result. That, I think, I was saying to somebody the other day that, Højbjerg, whether he was imminently leaving on Friday or whether he wasn't, his role now is to come on and to see games out. And he did it against United. I think he did it at Bournemouth. And, that's what his role is. I think obviously we're not playing all these games twice a week or anything. And obviously we've got internationals coming up. So I see there's a kind of refreshing of the squad and everything. And that's great. Ange talks a lot about it being the team. It's obviously the system is everybody's got to get used to, and people are putting about Phillips in the chat. If Dyer's not in the squad, then Phillips is going to step up. If Sanchez has moved on, then we haven't got anyone else. We didn't sign another centre back, so Phillips you'd assume would have more of a kind of role as well. So I think it's just like I agree with you, Jane. Bringing on 5 subs, I think, is brilliant, and it's just so refreshing that we're doing it to see games out and not to kind of chase games. And hang on and that sort of thing. It's really great to see. So it's almost like an indication the subs come on and it's like, woohoo, party time. And then that kind of builds in the crowd as well, and the crowd really kind of build on that as well. So yeah, it's great.
Yeah, I'd agree. I've been quite harsh, and I actually think I was on Saturday, about Højbjerg, because I haven't been impressed by him. But Jack, like, do you think he is actually good at that role of come in, just see the game out, don't let him score?
Yeah, I think certainly you would say with Højbjerg's got the acumen, the football IQ, if to come in that role. I think it's critical that he understands his role, accepts his role, and relishes it a little bit, because he's not going to get a lot of a lot of starts, as we know, barring injuries. And when Bentancur come back, he's even further down the pecking order. So I think that if he will accept that, at least between now and the end of the year, where we play, I mean, I haven't counted it up, but there's not a lot of games, that, he's talking about 5 to 20 minutes as a solution to kind of bring things down, take the tempo down, and just kind of, as Becky says, see it out. If he accepts that role and embraces it, knowing that I doubt his place in the Denmark squad is probably in doubt, then I think that's great. I mean, I personally, I think Pierre got a lot of stick unnecessarily over the last year or so, but I think that clearly he's not one of the best 3 or 4 midfielders at the club at this point, particularly in this system. So I think his role as a sub, just kind of burn some minutes, give some guys some rest, and shut it down, because one thing he can do is hopefully not make any stupid, daft decisions, and that would be a great role for him. I'd be happy with that.
I think, barring any injuries, I think he might move to Atletico in January. I think, like you said, Bentancur's coming back. I know we're losing players to the African Cup of Nations, aren't we? But I had a conversation with somebody on Twitter the other day saying that, the teams that they play for may not go that deep in that anyway. And then there's the winter break and things like that. So, yeah, I think Atletico Madrid play a sort of formation that suits Højbjerg. I think it was unfortunate that it didn't kind of come off, because he's like one of the ones that was mentioned all summer, wasn't it? That they had interest in him, and yeah, like you said, I think you agree with you. He's not, unless barring injuries, he's not going to be playing a great deal.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think especially with us not being in the League Cup, no Europe, no FA Cup till January, there just aren't that many minutes to go around. I mean, even if you think even if you're in the Conference League, he'd probably get a couple games there, sort of thing. So I can understand his frustration a little bit, but he's probably going to get 15, 20 minutes most weeks. He's still going to play some football. So he might think, well, I'll hang around next year. There'll be more football. I might play a bit more, which I'd understand it.
Spurs have just confirmed that Sanchez is going to Galatasaray.
Oh,
it says we reached an agreement with Turkcide Galatasaray, and it says wishing you all the best. So it's not on loan. Yes,
it's a 3-year deal.
Is that where Ndombele's going as well?
Yeah, he's going on loan, and they actually have an option to purchase. But yeah, so I think somebody, I don't remember whether it was you, Becky, maybe I think you said it earlier. I think you brought up a really good point, which is the system is now allowing players to emphasize their strengths and hopefully hide their weaknesses. That's a comment that's been made in our chat group several times, and I think most commonly by HG, who say your manager's job is to accentuate your strengths and hide your weaknesses, and we just didn't do that under Conte. He was bound and determined to say, this is the type of football we play, and I will make you play it whether you think it's a good idea or not, whether it suits you or not. And I think now you're talking about, Porro is a great example. I mean, he has gotten rinsed a few times, more than a few times in the game, and he's at fault, you could say, or at least partially at fault for most of the goals that we've had. But at the same time, if he can deliver a ball like he did for Sonny's fifth, I mean, I still would say that had Kevin De Bruyne hit that ball, it would be it'd be all over social media, and the pundits would be replaying that, talking about what a brilliant footballer, which he is. But that ball is every bit as good as anything Kevin's ever hit, in my opinion. I mean, again, maybe he won't ever do it again, unlike Kevin, who does it routinely. But I really think that, to your point, Becky, if you were the one making, is that you're giving people the license to play the type of football that they're capable of playing and not hanging them out to dry for mistakes. And I just think that's a huge liberating factor for everyone who comes on the pitch. And that's how you're going to get best out of everyone. And to the point where even Sanchez, I mean, I was fretting all day about, wait a minute, we're going to let Sanchez go? And I couldn't even imagine my saying that 2 months ago, just wanting to get out of the club. Because now I'm actually worried a little bit that, we're a little thin. We'll come to that later. But still, I think that's a great point that you make.
Yeah. Going back to their kind of their consolation goal, I've written down here. Van de Ven nearly scored his third own goal, didn't he? Because I think someone put in the chat that he goes in for the challenges, doesn't he? And sometimes he's very slightly out and they kind of loop off the player in. That happened with the Fulham goal, and the goal he scored, didn't he, against Brentford, was just that sort of funny sort of deflection. Watching their second goal, it was a similar sort of thing. It's Van de Ven that's diving in, and it's so I've written in there nearly 3 own goals.
How many centre backs could score 2 own goals in their first 5 games for their club and still be having a brilliant start to the season?
Yeah.
Well, our chief statistician, my son, actually went to the Premier League website and found that they gave Wissa the goal. They took the own goal away from Van de Ven because I thought that was harsh to judge that as a change of possession.
Is that the Fulham one?
Not the Fulham game, the Brentford game. He's not been credited that as an own goal anymore. The Premier League website actually officially has that as Wissa's goal. So he's only got officially 1 own goal. So,
Relief.
Hey, Seb.
Welcome.
Oh, you've moved.
Is it fixed?
I've moved. I've turned my laptop off, chucked it in the bin, and I'm on my phone.
And we've just talked about their second goal, so we're at the 5-2.
I respect your tenaciousness.
Well, if I can just add something, because when I got cut off before, you were talking about the changes. I get the changes that we made, but we really did lose, in my opinion, a lot of impetus. It kind of, we were 5-1 up after, I think it was 66 minutes, and then it's not that we stopped playing, but I get why he did it, but I think look, everything's very positive, but the only worry I think would be for me that the backup players, if you said kind of players 12 to 18 are not, we saw it against Fulham obviously, are not of the same standard. And the other thing is, on that point, I do worry that we might be creating a kind of A team, B team ethos, which is something we've criticised other managers for. It's very apparent, I think, who the best 11 is. And to be fair to Ange, the players that he gave the chance to against Fulham obviously didn't perform. But when you had that result and then you put out the team that he did again, obviously on Saturday, I think there is that there'll be a few squad players. It starts to maybe irk a little bit. He's going to have a big man management job on his hands to keep everyone, especially players 12 to 24, let's say, happy, considering that we haven't got a lot of games for them to play.
Well, I suppose to Ange's credit, he has given those guys, even after the game, like Højbjerg, he's giving them minutes in league games, even if it is just to see how games. Perisic came on, I think, at the same time as Højbjerg, right? Skipp came on late on, and even Richie came on the 70th minute after Sonny got his hat trick. I was hoping maybe he'd get a 6 for us, and that put a bit more confidence in him. But it didn't work out. We kind of didn't look like doing anything after we went 5-1 up, and then they ruined our nice 5-1 scoreline, which is.
Do you think there's a chance that Richarlison could be moved to the left, which is kind of where I thought he played before we signed him anyway?
Yeah, he did play there for Everton before Calvert-Lewin got injured.
But also the Forest goal. Do you remember the Forest goal the season before last when he crosses it for Kane away? That was Richarlison. Do you remember that game when he did all the keepy-uppies and the world went mad, didn't they? Yeah. Interestingly, that I watched that back on Friday because it's Brennan Johnson, isn't it, that takes him out. Richarlison was on the left then.
Oh, is it?
Yeah. Do you remember that? Do you remember when he did those keepy-uppies? and then someone just comes in and proper like scissor kicks him. Yeah, that's Brennan Johnson.
We've scored.
No way, that's great. I love it.
So Romero took out Richarlison, and then we signed Richarlison. Then Brennan Johnson takes out Richarlison.
If the admin of Spurs have been watching the tweets, then they'll video when they meet, or if they have met, or the video because I remember that from last time. Do you remember when they were in the canteen, weren't they, and everyone's going ooh. Yeah, the admin have been watching. The same thing.
I bet that's great.
But Kerry put in the chat that Richarlison was the only one that was really sulking. At the end, we're very lucky at the moment because we've got great away support. We've had all these away games, and then they go over to the away fans at the end and clap and cheer. Richarlison's still there, kind of, shoulders hunched, trudging across, isn't he? Kind of, I know I've said this before. He's a bit like Romero was last year. He's very extreme, isn't he? He's very emotional, but it is quite. I said something similar to my husband yesterday about Rashford. Rashford, I just think a lot of the Man United players are playing very similar. They all just seem very sort of like that positivity isn't there that we've got, and Richarlison's the only one that you can kind of see it still, where he's it is a team at the end of the day.
Yeah, and I think Seb, you've made a good point. You've made a good point about how long will the feel good factor happen when you've got so many senior players who are just not going to get minutes. I mean, I think obviously Perisic is clearly a person who's going to get a lot of minutes, and I think he's going to be fine. And Solomon's going to get minutes, and I think Richie's always going to get minutes. He's going to have to capitalize on those opportunities. But as you keep going down that bench, how long? I mean, the fact is that Dyer now seems to have fallen, behind two kids on the U21 squad. Potentially, now that Sanchez is out, and can that feel good factor, can the camaraderie exist despite the fact that there's going to be a whole lot of players who aren't named to even the matchday squads, let alone getting minutes? And I think it's a good point. It will be a test to see how good this leadership group of Maddison, Romero, and Sonny, and with Ange's leadership, it's going to be interesting to see how that develops through the rest of, at least through into the January window.
Yeah, it helps when you're winning, though, doesn't it? It helps when you're winning. Yeah. As long as we're playing well, it makes it easier, because they can't argue. It's if we go for a rough patch, which probably inevitably may happen at some point in the season, then it becomes a harder test, doesn't it?
Yeah, definitely.
Arsenal followed by Liverpool.
Yeah.
So we'll just to round up the game. Everyone give your out of 10 your ratings of the game. Go you first, Jack. Out of 10.
I would definitely give that a 7.5 out of 10. I think the 7 out of 10 will go. That last goal conceded, I think, really took a little bit of luster off, but it was such a comprehensive dismantling the rest of the time. I think that's definitely a solid 7.
Becky, what would you offer
it? 8 for me, because our 3 captains, vice captains all scored. We are still getting, like you said before, we'd had a lot of defenders and midfielders scoring. Now we're getting attackers scoring. Maddison scoring, obviously signing Patrick. The sort of whole field play, Vicario. And I was listening to Alistair Gold last night, and he, Burnley's a tricky place to go. Yes, it was a different Burnley when you had Sean Dyche, and that year when it snowed, and I remember we had the game in the midweek where Conte had that meltdown when they lost 1-0, and it's not been a happy hunting ground. And following the Fulham result in the week, and how that, because people were saying, we've done this before where we play a weakened side and then we lose the following game. So I think it's Sheffield United. I know we go back to that a lot, but then we lost to Wolves the following game after that and stuff like that. So yeah, to have such an emphatic performance, I think we need to be careful though that we don't expect that every time. Having said that, we have got Sheffield United next. I would imagine it to be fairly similar against Sheffield United. So yeah, an 8 for me.
Yeah, we'll go to you, Seb. What's your rating of the game?
9.5. I was more than happy. You go away and 5 goals.
Gone again.
Can you hear me? Oh,
yeah. We can hear you. No, you're fine. You're fine. Yeah, you're fine.
9.5. You go away from home, any Premier League team, score 5 goals, a hat trick for your guy playing through the middle for the first time this season. Just half a point off for that second goal, because like I said, I felt like it just went a little bit. But it was fantastic. I know obviously I've missed a lot of tonight, for which but I'm not sure if you kind of covered. I'm sure you have.
just how much fun it is again to watch. And, I genuinely look forward to watching. And as I said last week, the back end of last season, it wasn't even the back end of last season, the majority of last season, we were horrible to watch. I want to do anything other than have to sit through some of the absolute dross, even the games that we ended up winning, the Bournemouth game away. We were terrible, absolutely awful. And to turn that around like Ange has, and like some of the team has, and going back to your last point about Dyer, I think I said this last week as well, the most interesting quote that I read from Postecoglou, and he obviously very erudite, and there'll be a lot of quotes throughout the season, but the most interesting one that I read was about, really, he's not a miracle worker. Do you expect him to do the same things that his predecessors have done, play the same players, and get different results? Because if you do something different, he has, which is why Dyer is nowhere near the starting 11, or squad, which is why Højbjerg is getting the minutes that he is, and why players like Bissouma and Sarr and others are getting their opportunities. And he's giving them the in a way, he's almost giving them the rope to hang themselves with. And I think that's what Fulham was. Give you the opportunity, but if you don't perform, you're not going to last 2 minutes, and they know that, and the standard is high. So sorry to go back to your original question. I felt there wasn't a player on that pitch in the starting lineup who was under a 7.5 out of 10. Not one. That Vicario, that save is superb. Porro sets up the goal. You can go through man for man and go through. So I was really impressed. We play like that every week, I'll be more than happy.
Play like that every week, we'll win.
I want to interrupt real quick. Hold on a sec. I want to interrupt real quick. You don't get hosts using erudite on last word on Spurs. I'm telling you right now, this is a sophisticated group and a sophisticated audience. I just want to point that out. I applaud you, Seb, for not speaking down to the audience. That's a fantastic use of vocabulary, I just want to say.
Thank you. I'm quite erudite myself when I put my mind to it.
Wow, how we do strive to be intellectual here. Craig, what was your rating for the match?
I'm similar. I'm with Seb at 9.5. I thought, man for man, I thought it was a brilliant performance, and I think why I was so impressed was the growth of the team and the growth of the players within that team over the course of the 4 games so far this season, or the 3 games leading into that game. I thought every player have grown game to game. I think the understanding of the team from an attacking and defensive perspective has grown as well, and developing. We are developing team, we're developing side, but everything about that performance was warming to me and excited me. And we haven't, and Seb said, we haven't had that in as many 3-4 years now. Pochettino season years was the last time I felt this excited about a team. It's just great to see the players that were already here, who we already had in the squad, have come on and gone to another level because we're playing in a system in a way that suits them. And the players that we bought either last season or this season have come in and have just been unbelievable. Someone's put in the chat, by the way, and I think it's a really good point. Udogie is just an unbelievable player. I think he's come into this Spurs team. He's come into the Premier League. He's a man mountain, first and foremost. He's built for the Premier League. And he is, for me, he is as good a left back as Danny Rose in his prime, and probably even better, actually, in terms of his ceiling. Absolutely phenomenal. So you can't ask for more than what we've got. You can only beat what's in front of you. We've done really well in these first 3 games. Yes, we've got bigger tests to come. There's going to be ups and downs, but 9.5, is the minimum I would give, because I do see nothing but positivity and opportunity over this course of the season.
There is one other thing to say as well, and again, I've covered this, but this wasn't meant to happen at the moment. We were told when Postecoglou came in that he uproots, it takes time, the results suffer at the start. We knew we had new players coming in who, probably weren't going to hit the ground running. And we've had one home game. We had an away game in the cup. We've had 3 away games, and Brentford, Bournemouth, and forgotten the other one. Burnley, obviously, we play. They're not the easiest places to go to. So to kind of do what we have, score the amount of goals that we have, and see those players hit the ground running is, that's very. I mean, it's more than positive. We should be really, really upbeat. And as Craig said, there will be bumps in the road and all that, all those phrases that you want to use. But at the moment, I think we'll give anyone a game. I really, I can't see it. I've said for a while, Premier League is, every team is decent, but also certainly for the last couple of years, I think there's been a couple of elite teams, and then the standard underneath that hasn't been amazing. I said that when we got 4th, because I didn't think we were great when we got 4th. I just thought we were better than a few other teams. There's a real opportunity to really give it a go in the league if we can find consistency when I'm going to say when the going gets tough, but when through the winter months and back end of the year, and we're still up there, we'll give it a real good go. Momentum is massive. We saw that with Arsenal last season. I didn't think they were as great as what everyone said they were. They just got on a hell of a roll, and then obviously the wheels came off at the end of the season. That can happen. That could happen to us. So I'm really positive. I think City are a different league, but apart from that, I don't see anything that would frighten me.
I'd have to agree. Oh, sorry.
One thing that Dave... Go on.
Sorry, Becky, you go.
I was just saying, Davo's put in the chat about Kulusevski, that he probably was the one player that we haven't mentioned Bissouma, but again, Bissouma's level is just there, isn't it now? It's like an expectation. Do we think that maybe Brennan Johnson will play instead of Kulusevski against Sheffield United? Do we think that might be a position that Johnson is going to start in, or do we think he's going to play where Son played?
I don't think he'll start. I think he's on international duties, and so that'll have a big effect. I think if he had 2 weeks at Tottenham,
Spurs,
then there might be something there. But it's all options. I watched it on a Hong Kong channel, I think, but English commentary, and my commentator was raving about Kulusevski, especially in the second half, and just the spaces he was taking up and the runs he was making. He made more off the ball runs than anyone else on the pitch. And I'm not sure if you're aware of that. A lot of the work that he does, I think, is not noticed. He's pulling defences apart. But Johnson is rapid. We know everything. We've spoken loads about Johnson when we knew we were signing him. He's another option. He's a different option. But I would be very surprised if he started in the next game.
I think he'll certainly get some game time soon. Sorry, Craig.
No, well, I was. I can't remember what my point. Oh, I think my point was going to be around what we could do this season was about the fact we're only playing 1 game a week. That's it. We got and all these other teams that we're going to be competing in for the top 4 and other runners. Champions League will kick in soon enough. They're going to have those pressures of the midweek games. Their squads are going to be inevitably stretched. We're in a really good position here. We're in that same position that Chelsea were in when they won the league. That out of Europe, not in Europe, 1 game a week. We can go at this, and we have got we have got some potential challenges around centre back if we get a couple of injuries. But in the main, we can have a good go at this league this year. We think we can really do something. By the way, we just announced Ndombele as well.
Yeah. So
and I think
you go ahead, Jack. Sorry.
No, go ahead, James. I want to transition to the additions.
That's what I was about to do. I was about to say, we'll move on. Had 2 outgoings today. Davinson Sanchez, Tongi, and Ndombele. Let's not talk about Ndombele because I've made my feelings very known. We'll talk about
the only one positive about Ndombele going is that we are getting his weekly wages, aren't we? Off that's we can talk forever about Morecambe and all that.
Grand.
But it's the wages that.
Yeah, that's undoubtedly good. Well done to everyone involved. Unlucky Galatasaray. Sanchez.
Is there any news about how much of the wages we've actually? I mean, are they paying all of them?
I guarantee they're not paying all of them. Not a chance.
No, they won't be. maybe half, maybe 25%. But
any amount's fantastic. Any amount's fantastic.
And any amount is quite a lot of money because of how much he's on. Does that make sense? So
yes,
you know
that's
what I mean?
true.
Compared to a normal loan, you'd be like, yeah, the team can pick it because his weekly wage is so astronomical. Yeah. So does that mean Son is the next highest paid now? Because it was Kane, wasn't it? Kane, Lloris, Son, and then Dombele.
Yes, it is. That is correct.
Oh, yeah.
I think Son's still ahead of Perisic, but Becky's. I think those are two clearly the highest paid, followed by I think Hugo at slightly further behind. But yeah, I think Becky, you're right. I think Son is the highest paid.
Yeah, but it's good to get those wages off the books. Davinson Sanchez has gone for a fee. I saw it was 10-ish million. Here's the question I'd like to ask about Sanchez, because obviously we can go into the issues of perhaps the lack of depth at centre back, but this is a guy who played, I had this stat, 207 matches for Tottenham and had one outstanding season. What is Davinson Sanchez Spurs legacy? Go to you, Jack.
Oh, that's a really good question. So Davinson Sanchez's legacy. He at the time, I think he was our record signing. Is that correct?
Yeah, I think it might be 40.
I think it was 42 million, I believe. He was just coming off of a great run with Ajax to the Europa League final, where Mourinho targeted him aggressively. He was their pressing key, and he came over and had, you're right, he had one fantastic season, as did Wimmer, actually, I think, when he was briefly with the club. But his legacy is that he's a very, very gifted athletic footballer. I mean, the speed and strength that he has, his ability to recover and tackle, his slide tackle ability is really quite good. But he never ever really developed the football acumen to be a good, solid player in a possession-based team. I mean, his great season was, either between Toby and Jan or with one of them, playing with him. And so it's a great defensive midfield shield he always had. So he always had lots of great players, and when he was really good, he had lots of great players around him. And not surprisingly, this season, as we all saw, he was actually a fairly serviceable center back in this system. I mean, he wasn't brilliant, but I mean, there are many occasions where he really shown that he has some real quality. But the fact is that his I think his acumen and his confidence are just not high enough to play at the Premier League at this level. And going to a Champions League team in Turkey at this point in his career is probably a really, really good move.
The thing that I remember him is we've said this before, about when he came in the North London derby when Romero was injured late on, and he came on and then played pretty much for the rest of that season. Was it 4 or 5 games? That's when I felt that we were worried about how that would go, and that went. But other than that, it was a bit like with
he
Moore.
played well.
Obviously, Moore's got like the Ajax hat trick, but when Moore finished last year, it's really hard to try and think of really outstanding kind of matches in a kind of like a sequence. Because for me, Sanchez, it was that season after the North London derby.
Yeah, I'd have to agree. It's a bizarre one for me, Sanchez, because the talent was maybe there, but something just kind of went wrong, and it's unfortunate. I think a huge knock to his confidence certainly didn't help him past couple of years, and I wish him as well as possible at Galatasaray. So I think he'll do well out there. But obviously, there's moving on. There's the issue of we don't have very much depth at centre back now, because obviously Dyer's not getting near the team. We have Ben Davies, Phillips, who's 18, and then we've got this lad in the youth academy whose name's being thrown around, but that's it. Is that a worrying lack of depth, Craig?
Sorry, was that question for me? I had a rusted
at the same
time.
Yep.
Yeah.
That's to you.
Is it a concern? Yeah, potentially, yes. I think that Phillips over Sanchez or Phillips for Sanchez, I'm not overly worried about. I think we've invested in him. He's a top talent. His ceiling is high, and he's a player that suits the Ange way, isn't he? He's young, he's ambitious, he's got great potential. So I've got no problem with Phillips potentially coming in and filling in. Dorrington's just been promoted as well from the under-21s, I believe, so he's going to act as a second second backup in there. Again, Dorrington has got well thought of in the academy. There's lots of praise for him going around. So at the end of the day, this is the Tottenham way, isn't it? Whether we like it or not, we invest in the youth and we give the youth an opportunity, and that's what we're going to see this year. And clearly, Ange wouldn't have got rid of Sanchez unless he believed it was the right thing for the club and the right thing for his project. Ange is very clear, isn't it? One thing I've certainly learned, I'm sure you all agree, is that Ange knows who he wants and who he doesn't want. He knows the profile of player that he wants and who he doesn't want. And clearly, Sanchez was one he didn't want, and he's made a decision that he'll go with Phillips and Dorrington as those two spare centre backs.
Yeah. Sorry, did you touch on this while I was gone?
No, we didn't.
No.
Thank you, Simon. Appreciate it. Super Chat's the only way you're guaranteed to get your comment reviewed, read, question answered. This is less of a question, more a compliment and an observation about the increasing quantity of Spurs fans in Australia. Old criminal colony. Well, thank you, Simon. You are a legend. I am certainly not, but thank you very much for your kind comment.
Yeah. Just on Sanchez as well. I just want to make the point that he gave 6 years to his football club, and whilst he was not the most talented of players, clearly, he was always there. He always gave his all. He always tried his best. The treatment, we talked about this, didn't we, Becky, last season when he was booed. Yeah. We all talked about it. You was there as well, wasn't it, Jack? It was unforgivable for me to treat a player that way. And the fact is, he bounced back from that. He carried on. He stayed strong. He stayed in the club. I think him moving on this season was best for him, for his career, best for the club in the direction that we're going to. But I wish nothing but the best for Sanchez, unlike Ndombele, who can do one.
I think also as well that's really important to point out. People put in the chat is that I think I tweeted something about it on Friday. Is that whatever Dyer is doing or not doing is, Lloris has come out, hasn't he? And he made a statement as to why he didn't go to Nice last minute, which made perfect sense. That they contacted him an hour before and all that, and he said there wasn't a project. And I completely get that. It's still this radio silence from Dyer. I just think is really bizarre. I've said at the time, those images that he put on Instagram, or whether they were old ones or new ones, of him in the captain's armband on the night that Kane was going, and he's Kane's first mate, and I just think it's all a bit bizarre. Sanchez, completely agree with Craig. He had such a horrendous the way he was treated, but he came, I think it was even the following game he played. It might have even been Newcastle. He might have come on in the second half in Newcastle or something, and he just did a job. I know it was a nightmare, that game, but he, to my understanding, I've never heard him complain and grumble. We just talked about Charleston's kind of demeanour. Watching him celebrate with Son. Son celebrates with him for one of his goals and jumps on Sanchez, and they just look so delighted. And I remember thinking at the time, he might not be here for much longer, but he genuinely looks really delighted. And I think he's going to be one of those players that will always have a fondness for us after he's gone. Davo's put in the comments about, he did step up, but sometimes he wasn't good at this, that, and the other. We could argue about that, about many of the players that have come and gone through Spurs, apart from Kane. There's argument for people that miss Lamella, and Lamella didn't bring much, but we missed that kind of that grit that he had, and so I think, I completely agree. Good luck to him. Hope it goes well for him. Hope he really enjoys it out there, because Dele went out there, didn't he? But it didn't last very long. So I'm hoping the whole kind of setup of the Turkish league and that really kind of suits him, and it's tricky because the Dyer thing, Lloris at least has come out and said why he didn't move on. Completely get that. Still don't really know what's going to happen there. Is Højbjerg going to move in January? But at least the people like Tanganga, they've decided that for the good of their own careers, they are moving on. and that they this obviously spoken to Ange, and Ange just said, you're possibly not going to be part of my setup. This is your options. And he said that, didn't he, in a press conference, I think on Friday, didn't he?
Yeah.
To say they've got to make that decision. And I think for those that have and they've moved on, whether it be on loan or whatever, good for them. But the ones that have stayed behind, I just find that very bizarre. Very, Dyer, I'm sure, is thinking there'll be an injury and he'll come back into the side, and he's kind of almost hoping for that. I was reading people saying that about Maguire yesterday, because I think United finished with Maguire and Evans, didn't they?
Yeah, they did.
In defence.
Yeah.
So he may be waiting for that.
I don't know if we talked about it, so apologies if we have talked about it. But just on the Lloris situation, Becky, I'm not sure where it sits now. I read earlier, I think Paul O'Keefe may have tweeted it, that because he wasn't released within the transfer window, he can't sign for another club now where the transfer window has closed. Because he wasn't released, he was still in contracts at the end of the transfer window. So it's to prevent players just ripping up their contracts or whatever in the middle of the season and moving for free to other clubs. So he's restricted to a move now, isn't he? Basically to where the open windows are, which is Saudi.
That's true.
Turkey for a certain extent. Yeah. So if that's true, which, Paul O'Keefe's an agent, so I've got no reason to doubt that, he's either stuck till Jan or I don't know what's going to happen to him.
That's a really good point. I hadn't thought about it because we canceled Doc's contract on deadline day, and they had
to. It was in the window.
You're right. He is contract.
It was in the window.
Yeah, right. Exactly. So that's the reason they did it. You're right. They can't write that contract off. He can only go to Saudi Arabia or Turkey at this point, or any other place where the window's open. But so I guess so now you have the former captain and number one goalkeeper hanging around the club. You've got Dyer, who's clearly, again, given how Southgate chooses his squad members, I can't imagine Eric thought he was completely out for the tournament in the summer. So now he's been basically told that he's behind Alfie Dorrington and Phillips, who between the two of them have 8 games in the championship, which, again, I'm with everyone who says that. Again, I don't mind that Sanchez, we got some money for him, he's gone. But the idea that we're a suspension injury away from some combination of Phillips, Dorrington, and Dyer and Davies is a frightening situation. So I'm really thrilled that we don't have very many games between now and the January window. I think
I know we. Sorry to interrupt. I know we said we're nearing the end of what we're talking about, but it just occurred to me then, if all those things happened, do you think Udogie would play in a kind of left back sort of position, left centre back sort of position? Do you think Poch, because of it, the way he's such a unit? I don't know. They're just literally put them. We talked before, didn't we, about utility players and having players playing. Like you said, and Craig said then, there's absolutely no way that we would allow Sanchez to go if we didn't have a backup. I'm thinking possibly Udogie, if we came to it. I don't know.
That's a good thing now, Becky, isn't it? At the squad at the moment, there is options there. There are options. Ben Davies, as much as it will trigger people, can play at that left centre back position, and I'm pretty sure there will be games this season where he plays. Dorrington, as we said just a minute ago, is looking like a top talent. I'm sure, given the opportunity, he will come in and do okay. So Royale can play right centre back, couldn't he, if he needs to? So there are options in there. I don't think they may not be the conventional options or the sexy options in terms of another 50-60 million pound signing, but they're options, and we've only got to last till January. 1 game a week between now and January. It's not that far away.
No.
And I noticed I think I was listening to somebody talk about the Bournemouth game. Lloyd Kelly, he was dropped completely from the squad on Saturday for Bournemouth. And then when they asked the manager about it, he said that his head wasn't really there. It was coming to a situation where he did nearly sign it. I think he said clubs came in for him. He didn't necessarily name Spurs, but he couldn't feel he could put him in the squad in case he did move on. So he may be somebody that we move for in January. Maybe.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, I think it's probably a sign, Becky. I don't know if you agree that he was probably going to come. It's probably all lined up for him to come. I think the reality is we couldn't get Dyer and or Sanchez out quick enough. That's the reality of the situation.
Because Sanchez travelled to Burnley. I remember, I think Paul O'Keefe tweeted quite late on Friday to say that it's very unlikely he's going to move now. He's gone with them up to Burnley. So Bournemouth did that in the other way around, and he wasn't in this squad because of So
before we wrap up, we'll just have a quick chat about Brennan Johnson. because obviously we saw Solomon play and what he can offer. So with Solomon putting in a performance like that, Kulu playing really well, flew onto the radar a little bit. Has it become that much harder for Brennan Johnson to get a place in this team, considering he's our marquee attacking signing this window? Go to you, Jack.
I don't think so. I mean, if you believe what was reported by decent sources, that he was the number one attacking target for Ange, and Ange, to everyone's point here, is, if anything, he talks about players needing to be brave. He's been brave because he's just sent out, Sanchez after we can't bring anyone else in. So he's certainly willing to live and die by his decisions. I don't think that Johnson was brought in to warm the bench. I expect to see him again, maybe not straight away because he's going to be on international duty. But I in the way he brought Mickey in, I mean, what Mickey got here on a Thursday and played on a Saturday. I mean, it might be a slight exaggeration, but I mean, I think he sees him as a significant add to the squad. And I've done it. I'm not being Welsh or really a forced, fan. I dug into it a little bit and read what other people have talked about him in the past, and he seems to have a huge ceiling. I mean, I think that he, it's kind of like almost a Dele Alli in his youth with a lot of pace. His ability to get about the pitch, is willing to. And Decky, you brought up this earlier. He's the guy who chopped Richarlison down after his keepy uppies, right? So I think he's got an edge to him that sounds like. I'm excited about it because the one thing this system will absolutely create is an opportunity for people like Porro and Maddison and others to send balls in behind and through. And if you've got somebody who's lights out down the field, I mean, that is a fantastic. If he's got the finishing ability, he could become a huge star in the squad, given the opportunities that we could create. So I don't expect him to not be playing regularly. And I would, if I'm Solomon and I'm Charleston and Perisic, I'm thinking this guy's going to suck minutes away from me. But he's definitely one for the future. And being that he's counts as homegrown, I think that's a huge win for us. And I'm not really concerned the fact they spent £47.5 million because I don't care. This club is one of the most profitable, richest clubs in the world. They can spend the money. I don't care about that. So if we overpaid, fine. I don't care.
I think I tweeted something similar last week when we were in for Gallagher as well. I was quite pleased that it was kind of a homegrown element. We're a British club. I quite like the fact that we were going for British players as well. So that's kind of, I know we've got too many overseas players, haven't we? And we've got to bring the homegrown element into it. But I quite like that.
Not as much anymore.
No, not now. We've got to rid of two.
Yeah. So I think this is a good point here. They are different players. Brennan is, like I've said before, tries to beat his man, tries to stay out wide. Kulu is, I think, better at ball retention, and I am waiting for the day Ange plays Kulu as an 8 in midfield because I just think he'd be so good at that role. But,
how many bookings has Sarr got onto? Isn't Sarr on 3 bookings already? Because I know he didn't he throw the ball away? So someone put in the chat about these 5 bookings for these stupid sort of throwing the ball away nonsense, and we might need a shuffle around in midfield before Bentancur returns if they're not careful.
Well, even when Bissouma and Sarr go to the African Cup of Nations, let's be signing a midfielder in January, could be looking at Bentancur as the 6 and then Maddison and Kulusevski, which is kind of seems like all that attack, but that would be exciting. I'd quite enjoy that. I think you'd probably have to play Emerson instead of Porro. Otherwise, you just have nobody defending in that kind of lineup. But any last thoughts, Craig, on Brennan Johnson?
Just similar to what's been said, that I think he's 47.5 million. I think is a great signing. We've signed him because of not just because of the player he is, but I think the person he is. The fact that he's homegrown, he's a young player. He's ambitious. He's got a high ceiling, and obviously sees a lot in him. And I think that's the type of profile that we're bringing into this club. And as I said, I think earlier on, very much reminds me of the Poch era. We're bringing them young players in, hungry players that have got high ceilings, and he'll grow with Spurs and he'll grow with his team. I think he'll get minutes as we've said, but he'll get minutes alongside everyone else. I think that's a great thing about having the squad that we've got. So yeah, really, really happy with him. Good signing. See what happens.
I'd agree. Yeah, I've watched him a lot. Always think he's fantastic for Wales. And every day Rob Page doesn't start him and he starts Dan James over him, I'm going to call for Rob Page to resign because he's. I will say, me and your son have had this conversation about the American coach, and I feel the same way he feels about coach your country as I do about Rob Page. I feel stronger, possibly. Yeah.
Wow.
Anyway,
okay.
he needs to go. Anyway, we've been going for an hour 25. I'm very tired because I walked like over 10 kilometers today in 30-degree heat. I don't do well in heat, and I don't exercise. So, thank you, Jack, for coming on. Been a pleasure. Hey,
I really appreciate you having me. It's been a great fun. It's always a pleasure doing these when we're actually playing well and winning football matches.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Becky, for coming on. Appreciate it as ever.
It's all right. Thanks for having me. It was fun. Like I said, we like talking about lots of goals and, enjoyable. We're looking forward to matches now rather than dreading them and then not dreading having to talk about them after. I'm not back next week because it's International Week. So I've just messaged Gibbo because I don't watch all of the games and therefore can't talk about them. So I'll be back in 2 weeks on the Monday after the Sheffield United game.
If you see me during international break, it's to complain about Wales, not to talk about England. So if I'm here, get ready for that. Thank you, Craig, for your super sub appearance.
Oh, you're welcome.
Change the complexity of the podcast.
Yeah, no, it's been good. No, thank you. I just saw you was down to 3 and I just thought, I'll come and talk about Spurs because it's great. Not last season I wouldn't have bothered, would I? I'd have said, this is rubbish. Nothing to talk about because it's such a great time to be a Spurs fan. And plus, I haven't been on with Becky in ages, so I thought I'd just come and say hello to Becky.
Well, I'm seeing you Wednesday, so happy days.
I forgot one thing. I meant I had something prepared. I'm sorry. I want to take the accolades and the credit. I just want to share this real fast. So I had all 3 hat tricks in my fantasy team this past weekend. I just want that's the reason why my sign on here is 3 hat trick. I wanted to get some self promotion in. I forgot to do that earlier in the show, so I apologize.
So follow Jack on social media for
even a blind squirrel finds a nut.
Only thing I've got left to say is
see you guys.
Spurs.
Come on, you
Spurs.